I've always been an animal lover, and so when I started doing Reiki, I thought there's got to be some way that I can do this with animals. And also, if you really want to check your meditation, go volunteer and meditate at a farm. Because if you think your meditation is great, oh my God, all the noises and all the things going on at a busy farm, you have to learn how to be in that space and peace.
Welcome to Radiance, brought to you by the Reiki Women Podcast.
This is an interview series focusing on meaningful topics from our community of Reiki practitioners.
This season, we're exploring the intersection of Reiki and our animal companions across every stage of their lives and in the environments they inhabit.
From the vulnerable creatures in shelters waiting for homes to the aging pets we love through their final days.
And from the wild beings we encounter in nature to the animals we care for professionally, we're acknowledging how our Reiki practice supports us to be open to animals as healers and teachers.
This series celebrates the profound bonds between humans and animals and how Reiki practice can support both creatures in our care and those who dedicate themselves to animal welfare.
Subscribe now and join the conversation.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Reiki Women Podcast, and welcome to the first of this year's Radiance series, a series of interviews with people from our Reiki practitioner community who are doing really important work around specific topics. Last year, we got to talk with folks about women and health, and this year we are focusing on the animal kingdom and the many ways in which the system of Reiki can connect with humans and animals together. And for our first interview, I'm really excited to welcome Kelly McDermott Burns to our conversation. We've gotten to colleague together in a variety of ways, practice together, but never in this type of conversation and never in this formal way. So I'm really excited and happy that you've agreed to be with us this first time. So folks, to help set the scene, I want to introduce Kelly a little bit formally through her bio, and then we'll get to our conversation. So Kelly McDermott Burns has been practicing Reiki since 2004 and teaching since 2006. She's a teacher practitioner trained in the Japanese art of Reiki by the International House of Reiki, where you and I have studied together, and have trained in Animal Reiki through Animal Reiki Source. Kelly is a certified teacher of the Shibumi International Reiki Association and a founding and teaching member of the Shelter Animal Reiki Association, which we'll get to talk about more. She's also a past president of the Vermont Reiki Association and remains an active member of the VRA. As the Reiki volunteer coordinator for Rutland Regional Medical Center, Kelly was instrumental in bringing Reiki to the hospital. In addition to volunteering Reiki at RRMC, Kelly is a trained hospice and palliative care volunteer and teaches Reiki to hospice and hospital volunteers. For many years, Kelly has volunteered at Rutland County Humane Society, offering Reiki to animals and their caregivers, and is a member of the board of advisors for the New England Pet Hospice and Home Care. Educating the public and the private sector about the benefits of Reiki is a major focus of Kelly's work, leading to the first Reiki program at Guilford Medical Center. Her students are as diverse as doctors, senior groups, alternative medical practitioners, hospice workers, children, and animal shelter employees in Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. And Kelly speaks on Reiki frequently to a variety of groups, including cancer centers, hospice groups, and groups of animal caregivers. Clearly, we have a lot to talk about, and we may end up seeing you again for a future Radiance series because you're definitely touching on other points of expertise that we very much want to dig into in the future. But for today, we are going to focus on animals. So thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, that was a very impressive bio there. Yeah. We're not only talking about animals, but we're talking about non-human animals today. So, Kelly, looking back, how on earth did you end up in working with animals in shelters?
Well, I've always been an animal lover, and so when I started doing Reiki, I thought there's got to be some way that I can do this with animals. And kind of before Google, I went online and was looking to see if there was any information out there, and came across Kathleen Prasad's book, Animal Reiki. And I was very excited about being able to learn how to be with the animals in a different way than we are with humans. And I wound up studying with Kathleen, and she was putting together the Shelter Animal Reiki Association at the time. And I was really excited to hear that. And I right away wanted to be part of that. But I was also a little afraid, you know. It's hard to go in the shelter a lot of
Yeah.
times. My shelter here is pretty good, but sometimes you see animals in rough shape and coming from homes that didn't care for them and things like that. But I remember telling Kathleen that, and she was like, well, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? So I thought, well, that's a good point, and I can start trying, see how it feels. And I just loved it. I loved being able to go in and sit with the animals. And my husband's not a dog. Well, he doesn't want a dog. He likes dogs, but he doesn't want a dog. And we have cats. We've always had cats. And so I get my dog fixed by going in to hang out with the dogs. And, you know, the really wonderful thing about it is that there's such a huge variety of animals that come through there, you know, not just dogs and cats, but ferrets. And we had a ground or a hedgehog one time. There was a pig there one day because they had a rescue from a farm, and they put one of the pig in the dog kennel. And so there's always a variety, and bunnies and all kinds of small animals. So for me, it was really helped my practice because I got to have all this experience with different kinds of animals and seeing how they might react and how to be with them.
Yeah. And was it difficult to get into in the first place?
Actually, it's a funny story because I went to my shelter, a local shelter, and I had made an appointment with the director or the acting director. The director was out on maternity leave. So I go in and I see the acting director, and I said, well, I'd like to do this with the animals, volunteer here. And so I went in her office, and her dog was there. And I said, well, I'm going to do a little Reiki on you while you're in your chair. And so I did that, and the dog just crashed. And she was like, I've never seen my dog do that. So I was in, and yeah, she's like, yeah, sure. And it was funny because when the regular director came back after having her baby, she kind of looked at me sideways quite a bit and didn't really get it. But in the end, after going all the time and showing up and being a regular volunteer, she would come and ask me, do you think this animal would really be helped by this? And then she went to another shelter, and we have a great Reiki program where she wound up going. She
Right.
was really supportive of us. And so, really, having her just observe what was going on and really respond well to it was really helpful. So, we've got several shelters right here in Vermont that offer Reiki to animals.
Right. Fantastic.
Well, I just love you sharing more of your experiences and what drew you to this. I'm curious, when you had this experience working with humans and also animals, is there something that stands out to you as a similarity or a difference between those two experiences, working with animals and humans?
Yeah, I think there are more differences, really, that I was thinking about this. And I'm just thinking more differences because animals are really much more open to the energy, and they live in that space, right? They live in that space of in the moment, and their energy is strong. So for people, it's so different where you ask them if it's okay to touch them and they're on the table. And 9 times out of 10, when people come for Reiki, humans come for Reiki, they want an outcome, right? So they're, well, and they want to know what I felt and all of that kind of thing. But with the animals, they just take it or leave it, right? So so I'm not forcing anything on them. I always ask permission of them. So it's really important that the animals have agency and that they decide whether they want to come up and partake of the energy and even where they want to be when they're in that energy. So the typical session looks a lot different than what we do with humans because the human is on the table and we're moving around them, but when we're working with animals, we're sitting quietly and they're moving around us. And so that makes a huge difference. And if there's any similarity, it's for me to even come up with one, but mainly that they're really like people, when they're really receptive, they're so open to the energy. And then there are some people who just aren't. And so we also see that with the animals. Doesn't happen a lot where I have an animal turn me down, I'm always aware that they're, whether or not they open to what's going on. So even with people, when I'm working with people, I can really go into this space and close my eyes and that sort of thing. But if I'm working with an animal, oftentimes it's really not a good idea to close my eyes because I need to know where they are. And especially, and I've worked with some big dogs and some horses and animals that Care Foundation in Florida. You want to know where they are, what they're thinking. So it's really important to be able to pay attention to that. I think really the biggest difference I see too with people and animals is that people have an agenda. They come, they want this done, and it can take a while, but they don't have the patience for it. And so they come once or twice and then they're done because nothing happened right away. But animals, a lot of times, they're just in that space and they're open to whatever happens. And there isn't anything that they don't want. They don't particularly want an outcome like a human would want an outcome, right? And I go into a session also not wanting an outcome, just wanting to be with them. So yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to come up with a similarity, actually.
I think it's so funny. It's like they're so more, in some ways, so much more enlightened than us humans, right? When we're just always seeking an
Yeah.
outcome rather than just being in
Yeah.
the beauty of the moment and sharing energy. And yeah, that's pretty
Yeah,
striking
the fact that
difference.
they can so easily be in just be themselves and be totally present is really it's really incredible to watch. And I have two, well, I had two cats. One of my cats left last summer, and the other guy still, he loves Reiki. So all I have to do is have my coffee and my phone to come down here to do my meditation, and I'll be like, "Oh, time for meditation, time for Reiki." And his head pops up and he runs down the stairs and gets in my lap. And he'll hang out there. But Elsie, the other cat, she only came once in a while. And she would hang out a little bit and leave, but Bo will stay the whole time. He really loves it. But there were times at the end of when she was nearing the end where she would come almost every day and sit in my lap for Reiki. And so it's so beautiful to see like she knew what she wanted.
Yeah.
And Bo just loves it. He wants to hang out in that energy all the time. But Elsie was like, "Nope, I'm good." And then when she wasn't feeling well, she'd come down and she'd get in my lap and hang out with me, like get her Reiki time. So they know what they need. And I think that's another difference with humans is a lot of times when people come for Reiki, they don't really know what they need. They don't have an awareness of what's happening energetically for themselves.
Yeah.
I love that Carrie's kitty is coming to get some at least Reiki conversation, if not
Animals
some
always
Reiki.
welcome.
They are. It's totally appropriate. I actually wanted to ask a follow-up question to that. So you and I trained in the same system with Bronwyn and her organization. And I actually came to that perspective after studying Western Reiki for 3 years. I kind of found my way to studying the origins of Reiki and shifting the way that I practice it through an animal Reiki class. And what I would learn is that lineage is how Kathleen Prasad adapted Reiki for animals and found it to be a more appropriate method of working with them. And so I'm just curious if you have any thoughts of that. I don't know how much experience or contact you've had with Western forms, but I've it makes a lot of sense to me certain ways in which the mindsets of Reiki from its Japanese origins align better with animals than Western forms might. And I'm just curious if you have any insights about that or if you've made any conscious observations about that.
Yeah, I actually had studied early on. My first training was in with the Reiki Alliance teacher, and it's a very Waya Takata lineage. And so all about the hand positions, all about the hand positions, right? And I think we spent the both days of the weekend class I was just getting the hand positions drilled in to me. And no, I don't think that's a problem. I'm just remembering how that was and how it was so focused on what we were doing with our hands. For me, and then I studied with Western Reiki teacher, and it seemed to get a little bit more off the path of where really wanted to be. And some of the practices I thought for me personally they were getting into dangerous territory, right? So the idea of doing something for somebody who's having psychological problems and using different types of symbols and mantras and things like that. That did not sit right with me. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a trained mental health practitioner. So when I went and studied with the International House of Reiki, I really love that all the responsibility was turned to me, that everything I had to do was about me. And from there, I was able, that's where I work from. I work from a place of working on myself, balancing my own energy, clearing my own energy, strengthening my own light, and then being able to offer that to others. And so it really was helpful to understand that I don't have, the hand positions are just a piece. It's not the only thing I need to focus on. And that made a huge difference with the animals because we don't touch the animals in the let animals lead method of animal Reiki. We don't touch them unless they come to us. And maybe we reach out then and they back off, then we back off. So we're always mirroring whatever their response is. So we don't make them uncomfortable or take away their agency. So for me, it was just a no-brainer. I was like, yeah, this is definitely so much better for the animals and so much more respectful. I know there are other schools of Reiki that have an animal Reiki symbol and all kinds of other things, but I love the simplicity of the practice that I have and that everything I need is right here, right? And everything in the system of Reiki that I have to work with is for me. And this is what we do with the Let Animals Lead method. It's all about the Reiki piece of animal Reiki is about our own development and our own staying calm, staying grounded and clear. And so that is really through that, then the beautiful energy is happening that the animals are attracted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love your emphasis on simplicity, on the self-practice aspect, and that our role is to be with them in this
Mm-hmm.
way in our own Reiki, and they know what to do with it, that we're not
Yeah,
really doing much of anything. Yeah, I totally agree
exactly.
with you that I find that very effective with humans as well. But as you say, then there's a lot of their expectations that we have to filter through and kind of get them into more of that simplistic, simple yet deep kind of mindset. So yeah, thank you for
Mm-hmm.
fleshing that out for us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good point too, is that the simpler the practice was for me when I was letting go of all the other stuff I had learned, right? And the
Yep.
simplicity of the practice changed everything. So all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is different. And because it was simple, it was easier to go deeper. There's not a whole lot of other stuff out there, that I was focusing on or wondering, should I use this symbol or chant this tone or do this, whatever.
Yeah.
There wasn't any of that. So that's what I really appreciated. And it's, what I practice today still.
We're really lucky to have a structure to work within that can give us those guidelines because aren't we just as humans so wanting to make things more difficult, right?
Yeah.
But actually, this is not a Reiki thing, but there is a guy that I watch these videos on YouTube and he goes into the shelters and he sits with Rocky Kanaka. I think is that his
No,
name?
that
Oh
doesn't.
my God, you should look him up.
I
Anyway,
love Rocky Kanaka. I
oh
am
my
absolutely
God, he's
obsessed
so
with his
beautiful.
videos.
And look, who knows, maybe he is a Reiki practitioner. I don't know. But really, he works with animals just very simply. And it's about trying to connect to animals that have enormous amounts of trauma and are sitting in shelters and are very unhappy. But I mean, for those of us who have practiced the system of Reiki, then we have the outline, we have the skill taught to us to help us do what people like him tend to do quite naturally. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that simplicity without trying to make the animals do something or be something. And I see it with my own animals because they all respond differently with how I am with them. And each one is an individual and you need to treat them with that respect of being an individual. And it's not like there's just one way to be with animals. I love all of that. From what you were just saying before, there was some really profound insights about this. Do you have any other really important insights that you feel that you've learned as you've been practicing with animals, I guess in shelters and just regularly with your own pussycats or yeah.
Yeah, I spent some time. I went to India for a couple of weeks with a colleague, and we went to Tolfa, Tree of Life for Animals, who is a member of our organization, the Shelter Animal Reiki Association. And I learned so much from the animals there because it was such a different situation, right? So I go into the shelter here and they're all pretty, I do get to go in with the intake animals before they're up for adoption, but I go in, the animals were all in pretty good shape and everybody's ready to go home. And Tofa took in a lot of street dogs. So sometimes street dogs, if they were there too long, they also have a hospital. I'm actually on their board now, but they also have a hospital. And so when an animal's there, a dog's there too long, for instance, getting well, they can't be put back out into their pack in the community because the pack won't accept them if they've been gone too long. So there are all these dogs, and when you walk in the campus, there are all these dogs running around and have got two-legged dogs. They're just dragging themselves all over the place and they run up to greet you and one legs, two legs, tongues hanging out because they've had some sort of, I forget, I always forget what that illness is that they get that attacks their nervous system. I always forget the name of it. But anyway, they are not acting, oh, woe is me, there's something wrong with me, and don't I'm so miserable or I'm so sad. And so that was one of the things that was really important to learn when I started working with animals was that if I'm bringing that energy of pity to them,
Mm,
that is not helping them at all. I mean, these dogs were happy. There was no reason to think they weren't. They acted like regular dogs. They were wrestling with each other, laying in the sun, all of that. And so for me to go in there with, oh, that's so sad, is going to just bring everything down.
yeah.
So it was really good to see that in real life, right? I understood the idea of it, but to see that these animals, they were just enjoying life and not caring that they had two legs instead of four legs. It was really profound for me to see that in action. And while I was there, we also went to Animal Aid, and there they had a cow who was actively dying. And the cow was on a tarp on the ground, and they asked me to go and do some Reiki. So I went back there, and what I saw was this cow laying on the ground and another cow standing right next to her
Mm,
and just holding space. I mean,
mm,
it was really amazing to see that. And for me, it was like, that's how you hold space. That's how I want to learn to hold space for somebody who needs that, right? And I think that's something that really translates over to humans too, right? I mean, we can hold space in the same way we hold it for animals without, oh, do you want some Reiki? I'm going to do some Reiki for you. Can I put my hands on you? We don't have to do that. If somebody sits down next to us and they're in, look like something's happening, they're sad or whatever, we don't have to do anything but breathe and just connect with our beautiful light. And well, we're always connected to that. So really bring mindfulness to sitting with that person without even, hey, you want some Reiki, right? But just letting that energy flow and they'll take what they need if they need it. So it's the same thing with the animals. We sit quietly, just being in that energy, shining that light, and they come and go through that light as much as they want. So I think
yeah.
that just seeing those two cows was so moving and to
Yeah.
see how that cow, the other cow just naturally knew what to do.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I just spent the weekend with a chicken who had a prolapse, which you don't even want to know what that is, right? But it's not nice. And actually, the egg was outside of the body with the prolapse. It was just terrible. But when I found her, actually, her rooster was with her. So she's there. The rooster was with her and just doing exactly the same thing, just being with her in that. But I spent the weekend trying to put a prolapse back into a chicken, which was just very unpleasant. But it is that thing of how do you be with an animal in that Reiki space, which For me, it's certainly not about, oh, I'm not going to sit there trying to do hand positions on some poor chicken that's
Mm-hmm.
got a prolapse, right? I mean, it's about common sense, a lot of it as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
just being with another being. And really, yesterday I had to take the chicken to the vet and have it put to sleep because you can't leave, I couldn't leave it in that pain, and it was not,
Right.
it couldn't be fixed. So there was too much damage. So but the chicken is being put to sleep. And at the same time, I'm in that, holding that space for that chicken, open, shining that sun for that chicken, not feeling pity for that chicken,
Mm-hmm.
being there for the chicken, supporting it. It's exactly all those things you just spoke about. And that is really beautiful. And it's almost when we feel pity, it's almost self-pity for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's self-indulgent, I feel.
Right. Right.
It's we need to let go of that, and we need to actually be able to be open and share what support we possibly can in those moments, in all moments, of course. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's so
Yeah,
beautiful.
absolutely. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think for for the longest time for myself, even being around things that was intolerable. Like I couldn't handle the pain or the
Yeah.
getting how upset I'd get. And when I was at Tulsa again, I was in the puppy house and they had one puppy that was really sick and they don't have what we have here, right? They have when I go to the shelter here, they've got Purell on every doorway and they use medicine and at Tulsa they were using things like spirulina to give them nutrition and turmeric paste for wound care and that sort of thing. And so there was a little puppy who was not doing well. And then there was another puppy who was on the floor, and I was doing Reiki with that dog. And when I turned around and walked away for 2 seconds, and I came back and it was gone. That dog was gone.
Mm.
And I thank God I do a lot of grounding. It's like I ground, 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 ground. That's my thing. And if I hadn't, I don't know that I could have hung out there any longer. I mean, I
Yeah.
walked out and cried to my friend right away. And I was just like, "Wah!" And she's like, I was waiting for you to do that because she'd been there a few times. And then I was okay to go back in because the need was more than my personal comfort.
Yeah.
And so knowing that I could stay grounded and that what I was doing was important and not get caught up in, again, the outcome, not trying to change anything for them, just supporting them where they are.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, that's so beautiful. And my cat has decided to join for our conversation, sharing her
She's
life
just
with
a
us.
cat
And we're
lady.
sharing her life with us.
What's her name?
It's so funny. Her name's India.
India?
And yeah, India. And well, it's so interesting. We're having this conversation about your experience in India as
Yeah.
well. And I traveled to India, and after I came back from that trip, I got her. So but she's my Reiki cat, and she shows up for all of my videos and just things that I'm doing. And so I actually was just leading a Reiki 3 course prior to this. And one of my clients had experienced a bunch of preparation videos that I had for her for the course. And my cat was such a big part of it. Anyways, and then so we're in the course, and she's like, "Your cat is here with us." She's like, "I can just like see her intuitively with you." So, anyways, that's our pets are just with us, aren't they? Such a beautiful
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah. I was just gonna say one of my first Reiki cat was Tux, also a black and white Tux,
Oh, text,
Murphy.
yeah,
Yeah, he loved it. He
best.
loved it.
Oh, so sweet. So I was wondering if you'd share just some more memories or stories from your work with animals in Reiki. Any other experiences that you had that were just really touching or life changing for you?
God, I got so many. I've got so many. I think probably one that was really funny was I was teaching a class at a horse sanctuary, and there was a gentle horse in the paddock, and we set up our chairs out there to do Reiju during to do the spiritual blessing. And she was kind of down the corner and wasn't paying attention. And then I started working. I had my hands over somebody's head. There were 3 students. And she came over and she just sort of sniffed at my hands like she was checking out my work. And then I went to the next student and she did it again. She just followed me down the row, checking out every person in the way I was doing the Reiki or something. It was really funny. So that was one of my favorite things that happened. And a really interesting one that happened was I taught at an alpaca farm for a while also. And alpacas are great they're wonderful teachers. And we really believe that animals are amazing teachers, right? So the alpacas, it was a bunch of males, and we would go in with them, which was fun. They were really great, but you had to really be slow and cautious with them. So it taught the students how to be deliberate with their movements and not rushing around, but taking their time and being aware of their surroundings and what's happening with the animals. So I'm watching them all go in with these alpacas, and the alpacas just took off. But the minute they stopped and they started doing their breathing, they all kind of turned around and they just came wandering back and stood in front of the students. So they were really funny. And I see that with cats too. They're similar in that way where it's like in sheep, right? Really spooked and then okay, but I'm really aware of the energy. And I found it's always been fun to do a practice with the students at the farms where they're working on each other, but near the animals, because when they're really focused on each other and not focused on the animals feel free to come and check out the energy and see what it's all about. But if they're just doing a meditation, for instance, they might be overly focused on, was this animal going to come over and come to me, or all those things that we do when we're learning and we really want to see a result. So it's fun to have them work on each other. We do the three diamonds as a pair. And then while they're doing that, then there's a sheep farm I work at too. And they all come around and they just stand next to the students. And so they get an opportunity to see what it's like when their energy is just not, they're just being, right? They're just being
That's
together.
beautiful.
So it's really fun. And I have one more story. It was really a treat to go to Wildlife SOS when I was in India. And we stayed on the property. And so we were feeding the elephants in the morning and everything. But we had taken time to talk to a couple of staff members about what we did. And they were really interested. And it was natural to them, right? They weren't like, what is this crazy stuff? They totally got the meditation idea and everything. And we did a little talk with them, and then we did Reiki with them and everything, and they really loved it. And the next day they were like, we don't want you feeding the elephants. We want you to go and work with these elephants there are two teenagers, Peanut and Coconut, who were with these three senior elephants. And they were up to all kinds of stuff, and it scared the senior ladies, right? So they were always trying to rein them in and keep them calm. They were getting nervous about their behavior. So we sat down outside the fence and started doing our meditation, inviting them in. And this most senior, I think, of the elephants came over to the fence. The other two kind of circled around the two teenagers. And then Susie, her name was, she came over to the fence and she took her trunk and she was just like doing this in front of the fence with us. And then she turned around and left. And then when one of the younger ones came forward, she didn't try to stop them at all. So it's really interesting to see how they kind of protected them first to make sure everything was
Yeah.
cool. And then she came by and they feel everything with their trunks. So she was just like in front of the energy. It was really neat. It's a treat.
It's interesting, isn't it, culturally about, how different cultures, because, I was in India for 2 years and they had, wherever you'd sort of go after having studied Reiki, that people were always wanting you to be a part of whatever they were doing, invite you to this or do that, to work in that way. And that's something that I think in a lot of our more westernized countries that we put up a lot of, I don't know what that is. It's almost like a bureaucratic thing that we don't want. You have to have proven yourself in some way. I don't know what that is, but I guess you might come across that in shelters as well here.
Yeah, I've had pretty good results with the staff that I work with. But there have been times also where they're just, and I offer, because that's one of the things that we do is when we offer to train the staff
Yeah.
gets trained for free. And then we offer the Shelter Animal Reiki Association. And then we also offer the staff Reiki because those guys are so overworked and it's a lot of stress and just what they're dealing with too. Some of the situations, they're great candidates for compassion fatigue, right? So it's a really good opportunity to work with them. And but they're always so busy but for the most part I haven't really hit any walls with the staff there because they're willing to try pretty
That's
much
great.
anything to help the animals as long as it's safe. And I've been there, I don't know, 10 or 11 years now I've been going there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I I think probably the funniest thing that ever happened was this wasn't a shelter, but a senior center nearby. And I was doing chair Reiki for the residents, right? And so this senior guy, he was poo-pooing the whole thing and everything. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna push it. And so then before I left, he was like, okay, I'll try it. So I did a little short chair session with him. And I was like, how you doing? He's like, well, I feel relaxed. It was an awful thing. Like, what's the point of being relaxed? It just was so funny. I never forget that.
I
Yeah,
thought
that guy.
this was energy and it was going to pump me up.
It's like a burning bush situation or something. Yeah, and I think the thing that I think we come up against all the time is that people don't recognize that they already have all of this inside of
Mm.
them. That we're all this energy, we're all this light, and I think I have my opinions about that. I'm not gonna probably say them here, but yeah, I think that it's that whole idea has been totally trained out of us in a way.
Yeah, I think just thinking about what you were saying, I think often it's our confidence issues that probably would be the thing that would get in the way of
Hmm.
being in that environment and putting ourselves forward as someone who would be able to do that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's especially with the shelters, it's hard because I don't see the same animals every week sometime, most of the time, right? And I just was fortunate enough, not for the dog, but for myself to do 6 in-person sessions over the course of 6 or 7 weeks with one dog
Yeah.
and see him every week and be able to actually document. I did short videos of it and it's on my YouTube channel. And so each session was a little different and you could actually see his
Mm.
progress where he wasn't so riled up about everything going on. And then the next week he was a little better. And then he'd kind of slide back a little. And then by the last week, he just sat down in front of me and he wasn't reacting to things going on around him. And so I don't normally get that opportunity because usually when I come back, animals have been adopted or moved to another area or something like that. So it was a real treat to be able to work with him that long. And he did get adopted. So that was wonderful. Finally, God, poor guy, he'd been there for a little while and he was a sweetheart.
It's it strikes me based on Bronwyn, what you were just asking and just this conversation that working with Reiki in this way is it's countercultural even to the like subculture of being in the alternative wellness realm, or however we want to call that, because this way of working is so much about being instead of doing of sharing freely and of acknowledging that what is needed each individual already has. And that's distinctly anti-capitalist. It's
Hmm.
distinctly anti-authority, anti like expertise. It's like we have training in specific techniques, but the expert in that room is that dog, or the
Hmm.
experts in that room is that man, and the expert in the room is that staff at the shelter. And then to create a container where this gift is shared with them freely and they don't have to pay for it. So it's like being in alternative health, wellness, however we want to call it, industry. It's still an industry. And
Right.
to work in this way like feels like another layer of countercultural and subversive. And I like that a lot. I'm
Yes.
here
Yeah,
for it.
definitely. Yeah.
Um,
And the other thing too is that we're such a results-oriented culture, right? I want to see results. I want to see them right away.
Yeah.
And that was the good thing about the 6 weeks with this dog, was that I could just keep saying, I have to be patient because Winston is not, he's taking his time, he's going at his own pace, and that's fine. All of that's fine. So really not trying to rush anything. And then again, just constantly checking, am I looking for an outcome here? Am I looking, do I need something from this dog? I have to keep checking that to make sure that's not the case, because they feel that so easily. Yeah, just letting them decide exactly how they want it to go, and just honoring that. And it is an honor. It's an honor to be able to work with animals like that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious for other people who may want to work with animals in this way. I know many of my students have that desire. They ask, how can I specifically focus on Reiki with animals? And I am not a Reiki animal professional, so I can give them some framework. I can share with them the way that we learn Reiki from its origins is well suited. I can direct them to the books and to the websites, to the Let Animals Lead method. So there's kind of these formal structures for what's the first right thing to do. I'm curious what you would offer to folks who really have a desire, either before they've learned Reiki at all, or perhaps as Reiki professionals, what you most want them to know, what you want them to consider, what might they not be expecting that they might be well to expect, and some next steps for them.
Yeah, I do a lot of talks on animal Reiki to different groups, and I always teach them Joshin Kokyu breathing to help them calm down, because a lot of times people don't realize that their own energy is what is part of the, it can be part of the problem of what's going on with their animal at home. And so I talked to them about how when you come in and you're all wild from the day and things didn't go right and your dog is jumping on you, was it your energy that's creating that or what? And so I always give them something to do, first of all, just a simple practice like that that helps them to stay calm and peaceful when they're with their animals. And then always letting them know that everything that if they want to do any kind of energy work with their animal, they always have to create it as an offering, right? Not invite the animal into that offering, but not sending any energy or anything like that, but just sitting with the animal, doing that breathing and inviting them to come and join them. And to also recognize that not all animals are going to want that, and they might not want it one day, but the next day they're cool with it. I mean, when I'd meditate, I had my cat Flynn years ago would sit behind me, and my cat Murphy would want to be in my lap. And I didn't know right away Flynn was back there, but that's where she wanted to be. She didn't want to be in my lap. So we have to meet them where they are and allow them every opportunity to get comfortable with what's going on and not force anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be what I would tell people, but mainly just make sure that the animal has complete agency and is totally in charge of the session, however it goes. If they want to be across the room, that's fine. If they want to be in your lap, that's fine. If they want to turn around, that's fine.
Yeah.
I love that. That's very sound advice.
Except when they're like 150 pounds wanting to be.
Yeah, Winston was like 150 pounds. And I had to be careful because when I'd come in, sometimes he'd jump on me and I had to be aware. So even though I was sitting in a chair, I had to watch him. I couldn't just shut my eyes and go into meditation and shut everything out. I had to know what was going on around me. And it's true with horses and stuff. You can't just stand there with your eyes closed. You need to really be aware. That's the other thing that we learned from this practice is how to meditate and be aware of everything going around you without shutting your eyes. So as you practice more and more, you learn how to do that and still be in that space. I mean, I think people think that we have to close our eyes and get into Reiki space, but maybe at first, but that's not necessarily how we can hang out with the animals because we have our own safety to think of, their safety. And also, if you really want to check your meditation, go volunteer, meditate at a farm. Because if you think your meditation is great, oh my God, all the noises and all the things going on at a busy farm, you have to learn how to be in that space and peaceful
Yeah, and
with
the
it.
animals will tell you if your energy is chaotic. Like
Right.
they'll
Yeah,
let
they'll
you
walk
know. Yeah.
away. And then
Yeah.
then the first thought is, well, they didn't want it. But that's not necessarily the case. So when that happens, the first thing you have to do is check your own self, right? What's happening with me right now that might have made that animal walk away?
Yusui said that we heal with our eyes and our hands and our breath. If we're
Hmm.
thinking of the eyes, talking about what you're saying, if we've got our eyes closed, we're not really present for another being. What we're trying to do is close ourselves off from distractions, get into what we're doing, which is fine to begin
Hmm.
with, as you said. But in reality, what we want to do is to be able to be with the world. We don't want to be separate from the world. And we want to be, if we have that lovely, soft, healing gaze where we are non judgmental, because the eyes can be very sharp as well, can't they? So
Hmm.
it's that loosening and softening of that, which is the loosening, softening of the mind and the body and then the breath. And so allowing that all to happen through how we're working with our eyes, I think is a really, it's a beautiful in to being with others, humans and non-human animals.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And just watching, being able to gently gaze at them. A lot of what we talk about too in class is staring is very challenging to animals, and
Yeah.
especially in a shelter. On how we move our hands can be just, difficult for them, and they react to that. So just being peaceful in our own bodies, and giving them the honor, or giving them the experience of our presence without again needing anything from them.
What came to me was the contrast I experienced when I was first practicing Reiki in the first 3 years that I was practicing it in the Western way. The contrast between dabbling with animal Reiki at that time versus after making this transition. At the time, I had a cat named Tonks. She was an elder cat. I think she was about 10, maybe 11 at that time. Black cat, beautiful black cat. And she was very sweet, very cuddly. She was a dignified elder lady, but she slept under the blankets with me and definitely liked affection and liked closeness. And so I'm like, oh, this will be great. I'll share Reiki with her. She's probably getting a little achy, getting into her older years. And so, being a good Reiki practitioner, I was trying to do the hand placements with her, and she was just having none of it, just absolutely none of it. Whenever she would be sitting on my lap, sweetly always, and then I'd be like, "I'm going to do some Reiki for you," and I'd start putting my hand on her head, and she would just be like, "Nope," and just get up and go. And it was really. I mean, it's disappointing. What am I doing wrong? What? Actually, I think first it was more like, what's wrong with her? Why doesn't she like this? And truly, it was like I was doing it wrong. Like I was applying entirely the incorrect technique. And so after that Reiki, animal Reiki class, that was my entry point into discovering that you absolutely can learn the original form as well as we can now. And that's what originally connected me to International House of Reiki, was that class. And just kind of playing with this new way of working, which was very, as you've described, just being with them. And we learned a version of Jushin Kokyu in that class. It was the first time I'd encountered anything like that. And just the night and day change. It was kind of like she looked at me as like, okay, finally you figured it out. Like, finally you figured out that like I already know this. Like I am already fine. Like I got this Reiki
Yeah.
situation, or however cats would call it. I just need you to be with me in this space. Just come join me in this space. It was just like a night and day transformation. And that seeing that difference with the same animal was one of the things that actually really gripped my attention with following this different path. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's the story that came to my mind. What about you, Miss Carrie?
So, first of all, I often see eyes in meditation. It's just kind of a common thing. And sometimes I'll see whale eyes and horse's eyes and snake eyes, cat eyes. It's just, it's a thing. And sometimes I experience that. But I live in California, and coastal California, we have whale migration a couple times a year. And I have been shut out. I've been really wanting to do this kayak experience. We go to see the whales in their environment on the kayak, and I've tried many times over the last 5 years to have that experience, and every time gotten shut out. But over Labor Day weekend, the whales were in town, and I got a chance to get out there, and we did this really intense paddle super far out to experience a whale. And we sat with a whale for about 45 minutes out on our
Wow.
kayak, and it was just absolute pure magic.
Mm.
And what's interesting about these whales is that they migrate. That's the longest animal migration in the world. And just in terms of my own love of animals, I just have a huge affinity for wild animals. There's something magical about wild animals, and especially animals that are close to extinction, the gray whales. And so they travel all the way from Baja California up to Alaska and back every year. And well, anyways, it's just such an incredible experience. And it just reminds me of the journey of life, like the song from The Lion King, The Circle of Life, how we're just so tied into that. And whenever I listen to that song, I just like bawl. And I was out there with that whale and just bawling, because it's like we're all on this incredible journey of life, right? And there's these moments of connection, whether it be human or animal, or these profound experiences that we have where we can just meet each other on our journey and somehow share this experience. So it was just such a high, such an incredible moment to have that connection with the whale. And then I came home, I took my dog on a walk, and it was blackberry season out here, and I must have stopped and just ate gallons of blackberries. I just felt my body was just, oh my God. And it just, the flavor and the earth connection was so deep, and it made me feel so alive. So it was my special experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the wild. I live in Vermont and side of a mountain here, and we have wild animals all the time. And so whenever I'm on my walk and I encounter one, I always stop and let them know that I'm safe. And I just do some breathing and visualize them just taking whatever they need from that. And it's just been incredible there was a little fox that as a kid, I started being friendly with, and he would follow me up the hill and then follow me back down. And it just wasn't scared of me. And it was so interesting to have that interaction with him. And it just, every time I would see him, I would just stop and do some breathing and then go on my way and not force anything on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many beautiful animals that we can connect to that way.
That just reminds me of the owl. I think I told you guys about that owl, but there was an owl. Someone who was staying here at my place came back and they said, oh, there's an owl stuck in a fence. And I went up, it was out on the road, went down the road. There it is. Someone had a barbed wire fence with that sharp bits of wire. Anyway, the fence was like that. And the owl was stuck in this fence, and it was just hanging there.
Oh.
And I just go into that. I don't know what that is. It's just that thing where you just know that you have to do something. And so you set aside all the things we were talking about, all the worries and anything. And we must have brought, I don't even know how I had that, but some wire cutters. Maybe we already knew when we went up there, and we went and I held the owl. Because it looked at us, it was amazing, actually. The owl was just lying there. And when I arrived, you know how they have that head swivel? It
Yeah.
just did the head swivel and it looked straight at me like that. And I was just like, okay. And it's just like, you just know, you just got to do it. And you just put everything aside and it's sort of like training. Oh, you go back to your training, isn't it? And you just feel grounded, open, went straight to the owl, held the owl. Someone clipped on either side the metal wire, and I just held the owl, and it lay like a baby in my arms. And it's just that whole thing of I just didn't exude any fear or anything like that. And it was just total being there. Kelly, you talked about that, holding that space for whatever being, for whatever they need, and doing that, and then put it somewhere safe, and got the wildlife people to come to make it better. But it was just the most amazing experience, because you don't think, it's just, there's no thinking, and there's just that doing and being in it, and it's that connection of that thing of us all being animals and just knowing that we can all
Hmm.
just be there together. And yeah, so it was a beautiful experience. Mm.
Mm. Yeah, they're such incredible creatures. And I think that's also what I learned from my practice is that I'm not above the animals, right? So I feel them as equal in my life, in my practice, but otherwise, in that they are just actually probably better teachers than I am, than anybody I know, because they're in that energy, their own energy. They are authentic. They are being who they are. They're not trying to be anything else, and they're in the moment. And so there's so much to learn from that, but also just the generosity also of animals where they are, for instance, the owl who awful strong claw, awful strong beak as well. It could really hurt you, but
When I rang the
the
wildlife,
generosity of
Kelly,
like,
I rang up the wildlife place, right? And they have a little answering machine message, and it says, if you come across any raptors, do not go near them. And I was like, oh, it was too late by that
whoops,
point, obviously. Oops.
too late.
You're like, we're already friends. It's fine. It's fine.
That's right. That's right. I know this guy.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing.
That's a great story, though, of just holding that space and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I like to, Carrie mentioned letting go of the ego, and I think that's something that animals pick that up right away. They know when you're in your ego, and again, checking in constantly of like, am I wanting anything here? Am I looking for do I have expectations? Am I looking for an outcome? Asking myself that all the time, just to make sure that I'm not letting my ego slip in.
Beautiful.
They're going to tell me if it is. So, but they're also very forgiving, right? So I go back into my
Yeah,
space and then they're like, okay, now she gets it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Kelly,
Mm.
thank you so much for joining us, for being our first guest in this Radiance series. I am looking forward to all of the conversations because I've already learned so much from this conversation and feel very inspired by it, as I'm sure our viewers and listeners will as well. So those of you who have been watching along with us, please do share down below your experiences with animals and Reiki, the coming together of your practice with encounters with animals. Do you have questions for our guest? We can pass them along to Kelly and get them answered in the comment
Yeah.
section. We will, of course, put all of Kelly's information, including her YouTube channel, down below in the show notes. And let's throw Rocky Kanaka down in there too. More people should be watching his
Yeah.
channel, getting some dogs adopted. I agree with you. I think Rocky's just a natural Reiki person,
Oh,
no
yeah.
training
Yeah.
necessary. So, friends, thank you so much for being with us. We will be with you again next week for another great conversation. And until then, we love you. Goodbye.
Thank you all so much. It was so much fun.